let's get into our top story then. Charities and community groups across Norfolk have issued a stark warning to local councils in an open letter calling for more support. The voluntary, community and social enterprise sector supports thousands of vulnerable people in the county. Many organisations, though, say they are now struggling to survive and they are asking for more financial support. The letter was written by Voluntary Norfolk in collaboration with Norwich-based Fuse Network. It suggests the entire community sector could be at risk of collapse if more isn't done to sustain it. We can talk more about this now with Tasha Cobb, who's from Voluntary Norfolk, and the Chief Executive of the Fuse Network, Willow Farrell. Fuse helps social enterprises get started and grow. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Morning. Thank you for having us.
Tasha, I'll start with you, but because you're from Voluntary Norfolk and this is where the letter has come from, just describe the thinking behind it. How has it got to the point where you feel you need to write this letter?
Yeah, well, first of all, just to clarify, it's kind of led by us alongside Fuse as part of our Empowering Communities partnership. So we're a partnership of 4 charitable organisations that support other charities and social enterprises in Norfolk. Where this has come from really is our research into the sector, which started last year and we updated early this year, provided some quite stark reading really about the sector's position, especially financially and in terms of capacity. We have followed that research up with conversations with the sector. And while, we know that funding is dwindling in all areas and due to the impact of cost of living crisis, our costs are rising, we can't wave a magic wand and make that go away. But there are things that we can do to influence the funders and the public sector authorities that fund us and work with us to work with us in more equitable and sustainable ways.
I suppose, Tasha, the important thing to get across here and for councils and other funding bodies to realise is, what do you think would happen if a number of these organisations couldn't continue? What sort of a state would Norfolk be in?
Well, it would definitely be in a worse state. We support all sorts of charities and social enterprises who run, from food banks to local youth groups, village halls, organisations that support disabled people, children leaving care. There's a huge range of organisations that are at risk, basically, and ultimately the consequences would impact on the most vulnerable in our society. The stark kind of facts are that we might see a lot of those organisations close. Our research shows that only 79% of organisations are confident they'll be operating this time next year, which leaves over 20% that are uncertain. And when you think about the thousands of people that 20% supports, that's really quite considerable.
Willow, let's bring you in there, because you heard Tasha there using, one of the examples she mentioned were things like food banks, and you could argue that actually the charity sector, the voluntary sector, social enterprises have actually taken on quite a lot of the social support work around Norfolk that maybe in the past councils would have done.
Absolutely. We work really closely with councils to deliver services that they commission us to run, and that means that a huge number of community services are delivered by our sector, and like I say, that includes things like food banks, provision for young people, care leavers, for disabled adults, all sorts of different really key services.
Willow, is this just about funding? Is there more support that could be provided to some of the organisations that have signed this letter, do you think?
Absolutely. It's kind of about a lot more than just money. It's about us having a seat at the table and us working in a kind of fairer, more respectful way. There are a huge number of decisions that are made about the services that we deliver and the communities that we work really closely with without us in the room and without us being facilitated to be in the room. So we'd really like to see some changes in those spaces and also some changes that reduce some of the delays that we see in decision making and in payments to deliver these services, which would also, I think, improve the experience of people in Norfolk who access these services.
Tasha, back with you. How difficult a time do you think this is to be going to organisations like councils and asking for more funding? Because whenever we speak to anybody from any of our councils, that they talk about how tight money is anyway. Are they not giving you what they can already?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we focused this open letter around 12 key asks, and actually none of those asks are explicitly asking for more funding. And because we know from our conversations and our relationships with these funders and local authorities, as you say, that their budgets are also very stretched. And they're facing a number of challenges like local government reorganisation coming up. So we've got a number of different asks. One of them is around in-kind support. So it's not just donating, providing money and funding, but donating space, resources, sharing kind of those with us, with the sector where possible. As Willow said, having a seat at the table when decisions are made and projects are planned. Things like publishing timelines and being clear when a payment is going to be delayed, as that impacts on the staff and the volunteers delivering the project and ultimately can cause gaps in support for communities. And also we'd like to see a more transparent reporting on what money is going into the voluntary sector so that we can identify gaps, maybe help to see where duplication might be occurring, where we could spend that funding a bit more wisely within the sector.
And Willow, just to finish with, I'm glad that Tasha there mentioned the council reorganisation, which is on the cards and is being worked through at the moment. Does that cause a certain amount of uncertainty, Willow, in terms of who you'll be working with in the future, who will be funding these organisations? Nobody really quite knows what direction we're heading in, do they, at the moment, when it comes to the councils in Norfolk and what the setup is going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, with local government reorganisation and devolution happening at the same time, I think there is a lot of uncertainty. I think there are a lot of organisations in both of our networks who have developed really strong relationships with their local councils and, work closely in partnership with them. So to see a lot of change coming is quite unsettling, and I think people are worried about what will happen to those relationships. On the flip side, it's also one of the motivators for us doing this letter now, is that if there is a huge amount of change coming, we'd really like to bake these changes in to whatever the system comes next to mean that we can be in a stronger position in the future as well.
Thank you both for joining us this morning. Tasha Cobb from Voluntary Norfolk and Chief Executive of the Fuse Network, Willow Farrell. We've got a statement here from the County Council, which says we recognise that many charities are facing a challenging environment. This is also true for local authorities who've seen successive years of real-term funding cuts and spiralling demand. Through the Empowering Communities Partnership, we provide comprehensive and universal support to voluntary organisations. It goes on to say the County Councils work closely with Voluntary Norfolk and other sector partners to develop a volunteering vision for Norfolk, which aims to reverse the decline in volunteer numbers and improve the experience of our volunteers. It says the launch of the Norfolk Community Fund will see £500,000 paid to grassroots initiatives, which will be a major boost to some of Norfolk's smallest charities who might otherwise struggle to access funding.